It's not every day that a member of hospital security points a gun at you and accuses you of colluding with a known hospital threat. But very few days at Cashmere Medical are normal. Carl had the two of us in the sights of his service revolver, and the look in his eyes told me that he was not above pulling the trigger on both of us for the good of the hospital. "Carl," I said, hands still raised, "let's be cool, all right? I wanted to talk to this fella before we just decided he was no good. I did, and I'm convinced that he isn't a threat. If you put the gun down, maybe we can talk about this, and I don't see what we have to talk about. He's clearly gotten to you, and now you're in league with him. It's regrettable, but I can just as easily turn both of you into the police."
"You might be about to turn him into the police," the red-clad man said, "but you'll find it a little more difficult with me."
"Maybe," Carl said, the gun held between the two of us in case he needed to fire quickly. "But I've got something special for you. I've seen enough stuff here to know that you shouldn't be able to interact with half the stuff you do, and that means you're physical. Now, I don't know how physical your form is, but I know these here silver bullets I ordered should do for either one of you." The man rolled his eyes.
"You humans and your love for silver. Either way, I don't really have time for you to damage my vessel right now. I have business on the 5th floor in about an hour, and it's business that's a little bit important."
"Oh?" Carl said sarcastically. "Gotta get your next victim?"
"My next job, yes. There's a young lady up there who's in need of someone to guide her when she passes. And if she goes, and there's no one there to let her know what's going on, it's going to go very badly."
"I just bet," Carl said, "but I don't much feel like letting you kill people in my hospital anymore. So I think you're just gonna have to have a seat till the police get here. Any shenanigans, and I might just, what was it you said? Damage your vessel?"
"Little man, you are meddling in things you really have no idea of. If that girl passes out of life, she's going to be extremely upset. If someone isn't there to make sure that her transition is smooth, it will make that creature you saw in the OR look like a fluffy bunny by comparison."
"How the hell did you know about that?" Carl said, shooting me a distrustful look.
"Just because you are only recently becoming aware of me doesn't mean I haven't been here right along. I know about the twisted woman, the jumping girl, the phone ghost, all of them. The girl who is getting ready to pass will make all of them look like puddles after a rainstorm. Her anger and sorrow will cause problems unlike anything you have ever seen."
Carl motioned with the gun, clearly wanting us to take a seat. "Of course. Then I suppose you'll just disappear into a stairwell like you always do once the girl is moved on. You can tell your story to the cops, 'cause I don't buy it."
"What you care about doesn't mean a hill of—"
But the orderly had apparently misjudged Carl. Carl was in his element, having finally caught the thing that he'd been seeking, and when he took a step forward, Carl proved his resolve to see him brought to justice. The gun sounded very loud in the quiet cafeteria, and the orderly stumbled back as he clutched his arm. The red scrub top began to turn a dark purple as he bled, the orderly looking shocked that Carl had actually shot him. Carl, someone I had seen shoo bugs out on a piece of paper, didn't look put off by the bleeding man in the least. "Sit down, now. You can just as easily call in a corpse to the police department. I'll tell them you resisted and I feared you had a weapon. There's a mountain of evidence that ties you to a whole slew of murders. No one's going to question me too vigorously about it. Now sit." The orderly took a seat, and I took a seat too once the barrel swiveled back to me. Carl was on the phone, calling the sheriff's department as he tried to get someone who would come to pick up the suspects.
"You okay?"
I whispered side mouth.
"Yes, but That Silver's smarts. So, is it really as bad as you say?
I asked, thinking about the girl on the 5th floor that he'd talked about.
Oh, most definitely. The kid is the trifecta. She's a 13-year-old girl with an IQ of 198 and a scholarship to a prestigious private school that would open doors for her until she passes comfortably into her golden years. The problem is, she also has cancer, the terminal kind, and it's getting ready to set the sun on her bright future. What does all that mean exactly? I asked, not getting it. What it means is that she's going to have enough fear, anger, and unrequited potential to make a very nasty poltergeist if someone isn't there to ease her in. Probably one strong enough to be seen by normal people.
That didn't sound good. I didn't understand everything he was saying, but the gist was that this girl was going to go off like an A-bomb if she was allowed to die without supervision. This place had enough nasty spooks without something like that roaming free, which meant that the orderly needed to be up there when she passed. I really doubted that Carl was going to have a miraculous change of heart in the next little bit, but maybe I could help with that. Carl was angry with me, that was obvious, but we were still friends deep down. Maybe I could prove to him that the orderly wasn't the threat he thought he was.
When is this girl set to go?
I asked.
In about 30 minutes, the orderly said, looking at the clock. So, we have to convince him that you have a job to do, I said, looking back at Carl as he hung up the phone and slipped it into his pocket.
Cop should be here soon, he said, not sounding sure of himself, but sounding confident enough. Carl, I said, and when his bloodshot eyes turned to mine, I knew I had to get through to this semi-crazed friend of mine. You've got to listen. This orderly isn't here to cause harm. The people he saw before they died were going to die either way. He's here to keep them from piling up in the hospital like the other spooks we've seen. He's a guide to the other side, Carl. Carl snorted. Sure he is. Best case scenario, he's just a very charismatic serial killer. I guess worst case is he's some kind of vampire or something, though I guess the bullet would have had a harder time hitting him.
Excuse me, the orderly said, sounding indignant, but what did you call me? I am no mere...
I swear, Carl, it's the truth. You know I wouldn't lie to you. This is just a misunderstanding. Carl looked unsure for a minute, but the gun barrel never wavered. You did lie to me, though. You told me you didn't know anything I didn't need to know. You went off to meet this thing, knowing full well I've been looking for him for months. A lie of omission is still a lie, and I don't know if I can trust you now. Carl wasn't wrong, and I had the good grace to feel ashamed of what he'd said. Then let me show you, I said, suddenly landing on something that might fix this. How's that? Carl asked, clearly thinking that was impossible. Come with us up to the 5th floor. Carl laughed. Fat chance of that. What, and let you get one more for the road before they ship you off to Stragview? No, let me show you that he isn't the one killing them. If the girl dies, and he knows that she's going to die, then you'll know he isn't the one killing them. I give you my word, Carl, that this isn't what you think it is, and this orderly is as much a part of the hospital ecosystem as you and I are. If I'm wrong, then I'll gladly go to the police station with him. You can mark me as an accomplice, even. I'll go on the same bus to Stragview with him, if that's what it takes. I was taking a huge chance here. I didn't really know much about this orderly. Not enough to stake my freedom on, anyway. But if he was what he said he was, then we needed him in this hospital. Worse than they needed me. If this orderly were gone, then the number of angry spirits in the hospital would skyrocket. And while that might be great for my book, it'd be terrible for the facility. Like him or not, we needed him. Carl considered it, clearly not wanting to go along with it, but I think he heard something in my voice. I don't like this. I don't like this at all. And if I sense you trying anything, I'll shoot you, patients or not, he said to the orderly. Do I make myself clear? The bald head dipped forward, then back up only a single time. Carl nodded too and told us to get on with it. We took the elevator, mostly so Carl could hover behind us with his gun trained on the pair of us. I didn't actually think he would shoot us, not in a crowded patient area, but I had little doubt that he could manhandle either of us if it came to it. I'd seen the way he handled the drunks and the abusive spouses who sometimes found their way into the patient areas and waiting rooms. Carl was a big guy, but not all of it was grease. Carl was possessed of a certain amount of working man muscle, and it shone through in times like this. He'd drag both of us down to his office and sit on us until the cops got there, if he needed to. But I got the feeling that they weren't coming as quickly as he wanted. Carl had spoken softly to someone when he'd called, but his facial expressions told me that whoever it was hadn't taken him seriously. As we came to the 5th floor, I felt the nose of his gun poke me in the spine. "Remember, no funny business. I can lock this place down in a matter of seconds. You've seen me do it more than once." That made me wonder who was manning my post, since I was a pretty integral part of that process. Likely it was a security guy that Carl had called in, but who really knew? It could have been Mike or David for all I knew, and I hoped they weren't unknowing pawns in this. Carl was acting very irrationally, but I knew his heart was in the right place. He wanted to protect the hospital. It just sucked being on the wrong side of history like this. As we came onto the floor, the charge nurse nodded at us, but didn't really give us a second look. She knew Carl and I, of course, and anyone in scrubs basically walked around without questions. As we walked towards the back of the ward, I began to feel something. It was like a smell, if you could feel a smell. It was putrid, sickly sweet, like flowers going bad. Carl didn't seem to smell it, but I knew the orderly could sense it too. "Do you smell it?" he asked, side-mouthed. "Smell what?" Carl asked, clearly sensing a trap. "Yeah. Is it—" "It's the girl we're here for. She's going faster than expected. We should have had another 20 minutes at least, but I think she's tipping over early. We need to hurry." He started to reach into his pocket, but when Carl tensed, he stopped. "I need to get something from my pocket, something I use for my work. If you would—" "I wouldn't," Carl said, his voice brooking no argument. The orderly pursed his lips. "Guess we'll have to do this the hard way," he mumbled, and before I could ask him, he began to hum. It was a familiar tune, something I had heard last night when I cornered him, or the night before last, I supposed, since it was after midnight. I saw the nurse at the portable computer yawn and lean down a little. She wasn't alone. A housekeeper slumped against her cart, the towel she was folding slipping to the ground. A tech put his face against his arm and drowsed a little at his computer. Up and down the corridor, people drowsed and dozed, their movements dreamlike and their heads heavy. We, however, seemed immune to this, and Carl looked around with apprehension. "Is this how you get away with it? You put everyone to sleep and then you kill your victims?" The orderly gave him an exasperated look. "If I wanted to kill people, guardsman, it would be all too easy. This is not my calling. It is not why I'm here, and I think you understand that. Or you will, in a moment." We followed the beeping to the end of the hallway and found a room with a young girl and her sleeping mother. The room was awash in flowers and balloons and stuffed toys, all of them wishing the girl a speedy recovery. She was on a ventilator, the machine moving her chest up and down, and it seemed unlikely that she would be getting better anytime soon. I wondered where the cancer was, but I thought it must be in her lungs. How did a child so young get lung cancer? I wondered, but I realized it was probably just a fluke of the genes. A genius with a built-in timer. How horrible. She was likely smart enough to realize that her time was short, too, and not even capable of believing a comfortable lie to ease her into death. I wondered how the orderly was going to take this one, and I figured I would see. The mother, a haggard woman in plain clothes, was asleep in the chair beside her daughter. She looked exhausted, and I supposed this had been a very trying time. She was watching her daughter slowly fade away, and I hoped I would never have to face something so terrible. There had to be no greater pain than burying a child, much less watching them waste away before your very eyes. I couldn't imagine what she was going through, but I supposed it would be over soon.
"Thank goodness," the orderly said. "We got here just in time. She's close. It won't be long now."
We would have looked odd standing there watching the girl breathe her last, but I knew that no one would see us. No one had noticed him the last time, and they wouldn't notice him this time either. His song not only put the spirit at ease, but also put the other people on the floor at ease. He was good at what he did, and that was how he had avoided detection all this time. All it had taken was a single nosy security guard to find him, and his operation was put in question. "So what exactly is supposed to—" Carl started, but as we watched, the girl opened her eyes and looked around. Carl took a step back, not sure if this was part of it or not, but I'd seen it the night before, and it didn't surprise me. Her sallow skin regained the youthful beauty it must have held in life, and as she pulled the tube out of her throat and looked around, she seemed confused, unsure of where she was or what to make of her situation. "Where am I?" she asked, looking at her hands in confusion as if she'd never seen them before. Carl was walking backwards, the gun still pointing at us, as he tried to make for the door. We had closed it on the way in, though, and when he bumped it, he jumped in surprise. Am I better?" she asked, her face slipping from something childish into something more contemplative. No, I couldn't have. Once it progresses to stage 4, the doctor said there wasn't much they could do. Who are you two?" She turned her young old eyes onto the pair of us.
"I'm here to take you away from all this. All this pain and uncertainty will be behind you, and you won't have to worry anymore."
She looked relieved for half a second, the childish look returning before it was replaced by something colder. "Go? No, I can't go. I have too much to do. I have to get ready for the science fair. I have to write my English paper on Mark Twain. I have to finish my algebra work. I don't have time to go with you. I have too many things to do."
"I'm sorry, little one, but those things are beyond you now. You have to come with me so we can take you to the next stage of being. Whatever you have left behind here will have to remain undone. Eternity awaits."
He put out his hand, but while he was talking, he seemed to have missed something. She was breathing heavily, panting as if trying to catch her breath, and what she exhaled looked like smoke. It was thick and dark, the clouds wafting from her nostrils like dragon fire, and I put a hand on his shoulder as he offered her his hand. He looked at me strangely until I pointed out the smoke. When he saw it, he drew in breath and his teeth chattered slightly.
I know this is a lot to take in, but you must.
I can't die. I can't. I have so much ahead of me. I have to graduate high school. I have to graduate college. I have to win a Nobel Prize. I haven't even had my first period yet. I've never kissed a boy. I've never driven a car. I haven't done anything. I'd expected tears, but what I got was anger. "I can't die," she bellowed, and the smoke began to billow from her nostrils again. The orderly kept talking, using his calm and reasonable voice, but it seemed to only make her smoke thicker and angrier. I looked at her chart, wanting her name, before stepping up beside him and making my own attempt. "Lisa," I said, watching some of the anger dissipate from her. "I know you're angry. I know you're a little bit scared, but it's okay. It's scary what comes next, and the unknown is always scary. But if you linger here, you'll spend the rest of your unlife wishing that you'd gone with our friend here. I see the spirits who linger in this place, the spirits who let their business shackle them here, and none of them appear to be happy that they stayed. Don't make the mistake they did. Pass on. Be free. Be free of your sickness, free of your fear and anger. Be happy." She had stopped fuming as I spoke, looking at me before turning to the orderly. "Will it hurt?" she asked, her face becoming very childlike again.
"No," the orderly said. "It'll be different, but you are beyond pain now, my dear. Come, I'll show you what lies beyond this."
When he offered her a hand this time, she took it.
"Well done," he told me,
as he drew her into his arms and cradled her against him.
I stand by what I said. You would make a decent guide.
He turned to the door, looking down at Carl as he sat shuddering against the door to the girl's room.
Are you satisfied, Watchman? I had no hand in the girl's death. I am here to help her move on, not to cut her from the mortal coil. May I pass in peace now?
Carl nodded, getting up and opening the door for him.
Thank you, said the orderly,
and he and the girl passed into the hallway and out of sight. I helped Carl up, telling him he might want to holster his gun as the alarm started going off. We should go, I told him, as we passed the nurses as they came running up the hall to respond to the code. David seemed a little unsure of himself as he called the code blue, and I realized that Carl had indeed drafted him into his covert operation. We got to the elevator, Carl's face looking very red as he tried to process what he had seen. I was a little afraid he might have a heart attack or something, but as we rumbled towards the ground floor, it seemed he was red-faced over something else. I owe you an apology. My God, I pulled my gun on you. I feel so stupid. How could I have thought you were in league with a murderer? I shook my head. It's okay, Carl. I'd have probably thought the same thing if I'd been in your shoes. After that night, the red-clad orderly was never pursued again. Carl told the administration that he had made a mistake, and he had overreacted, and he apologized for wasting their time. He went back to something a little more normal. Over time, his demeanor shifted back towards the Carl we had all known for so long, and I was glad to see it. He took about a week off after that, and I suspected that he slept most of it. He came back with much smaller bags under his eyes, and I think it was the first genuine smile I had seen on his mouth in the whole month. I spotted the orderly more often after that, and sometimes he waved at me if we happened to cross paths in the hallway. He's an interesting fella, and I hope to talk more to him in the future. For now, however, I'm content to live my life as a normal receptionist for the strangest hospital in North Georgia. You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story? Or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad and Unicorn Hollow for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton tier contributors. And thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Sarah ASMR42, Grim Reaper, and TomBoiTopUwU for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. And a special thanks to Grim Reaper, who appears to have subscribed not just on YouTube, but also on my Patreon. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you, and your support is always appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon, or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early, at 8:30 a.m., as opposed to 8:30 p.m., my time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.